hit that one. On this week's episode, is there a future for the Aliens franchise? Can anything replace that Mass Effect shaped hole in our sci-fi heart? And we remember the life of Tom Dwyer of the Big Daddy Roadshow. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows. And if you get a chance, check out on our Pop Culture Cosmos or Game Source or wherever you can get our shows. You can go ahead and check out our ongoing D&D adventure, The Lost Mine of Fandover. Just truly a great adventure so far. We're over 30 hours in, so we're really having a great time. You can check that out either live on Mondays from 2 to 6 p.m. Pacific time, or you can check it out on demand right there for you at the Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. If we know there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, a lot of social issues and all the stuff that's going on in the world. Want to go ahead and let you know that if you're interested in my thoughts on the subjects and things of that nature on that subject, you can go ahead and check out my recent Lakers Fast Break with Tom Wong and also the episode I did this week with Rafael Barlow. You can check out those episodes today at the Lakers Fast Break podcast or on the Pop Culture Cosmos podcast channels. We go into depth on the current issues at hand, and we talk about all the different scenarios and all the different things that are going on. So if you want to go ahead and check out that, please do so. We cannot thank you enough if you do. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, but we just truly appreciate you listening to us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness. I was about ready to go ahead and contact a milk company because it looked like his face needed to be put on a milk carton. But it is a return to us once again of my good friend. You know him as the man behind the great book, Congratulations, You Suck. He's also our good friend when it comes to a great podcast that he does each and every time out with Topicocalypse. But it is a good man indeed, and he returns to us once again. It is Josh Peterson. And Josh, my gosh, I was going to have to go ahead and send the dogs out for you because, man, your face was going to be put on, posters up on the sidewalk right there. Have you seen this man? Just long overdue for a return to the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's just glad to have you back, my friend. I do want to go ahead and thank so much Jessica Boggs from the TVRatingsGuide.com. Also as well, Ben Arnault from Smoking Hot Confessions, and also as well, Noah Ian Fine from the Hunnick Outcast for taking the time and filling that gap, that Josh Peterson size gap in the past couple weeks. Just truly appreciate them hanging out with me for the past few episodes. But we are going to be talking about a lot of great things today, including, well, speaking of large gaps, we talk so much on this show about our love for Mass Effect and all the great things that are going on there, but there's no Mass Effect right now that's new, that's out, that's fresh. We're hoping something will come away down the horizon, or maybe even a remaster of the Mass Effect trilogy. But what we're trying to hope that, is there something out there that can take the place right now that can just try and be that fill-in gap for us? We're going to talk about a couple things that are out there that have been out for a while in Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen, and really delve into those two games and see why there's some promise and why they actually are still not there yet when it comes to replacing that Mass Effect shaped hole in our hearts. Plus as well, we're going to be speaking of sci-fi, Ridley Scott said a lot about the Aliens franchise recently, and we'll talk about that as well. And the Game Gear Micro. The retro craze continues for the Game Gear Micro. We're going to talk about that on the back end of the show. and we will remember Tom Dwyer, who recently passed away last week. He was the host of the Big Daddy Road Show. His producer, his producer Ryan John Tambasco, is going to stop on the show later on this broadcast, and you know what? He's going to talk about the life of what he remembers of Tom Dwyer, his interactions with him, and the show that they created, and his thoughts on Tom Dwyer. And I'm going to share some as well because I was truly thankful for the time that I got to spend on his show, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Ryan had to say later on in the program. But first, my friend, it is Aliens, something that you are more familiar with than I am, something that you are more fond of when it comes to the Aliens franchise. But 82-year-old Ridley Scott, still kicking, still alive out there, still talking some aliens. I wish he would talk more about a threequel, a third episode in the Blade Runner franchise. But he's talking aliens, so he's talking about how that there's still a lot of mileage, quote unquote, left in the franchise, and how he'd like the next evolution of the Covenant franchise now to go into, maybe let's say the how the eggs that were found originally in the original Alien movie, how the eggs evolved and how they came to be. So I want to hear your thoughts on the xenomorph eggs and the whole Aliens franchise. I know you have a great affinity for it. I know you've talked off and on about it over the past couple of years, but your thoughts on a continuation of the Alien franchise. Is there enough mileage left in that franchise?
Is this based on his comments at the during the Alien anniversary, or is this
This is something
more
more
recent?
recent. He had a conversation, I believe, at the LA Times, with the LA Times.
Okay, so here's with the this. It's funny you asked me this because we actually just watched those movies a couple weeks ago. We started with Prometheus and then we watched Alien Covenant, but I I do love those movies. I do love them. Did not like Covenant that much. Like, don't get me wrong. Alien 1, Alien 2, classic films. Alien 3 had its issues, right? The whole thing. It was David Fincher, right, that did that, and he had like a Josh Trank thing where they locked him out of the editing, and it seemed like the production of that film was a mess. Alien 4 was comically aware of itself, and I did appreciate that, but going back to these other films, I did enjoy the Alien vs Predator films, but Prometheus was such a beautiful film. It was so well written, and the colors and the editing and everything about the film was breathtaking. And they set up these deep theological and philosophical questions. And then with Alien Covenant, they just went back to the whole thing that they did before. They blew a massive storytelling opportunity, and for that, I don't know how excited I could be about a third movie in that series. I know I was reading things where they're saying they go back to where the engineers came from, like that was just an outpost where they were, and they're actually going to go to where the engineers came from. But I don't know. I don't trust it. There was such a great storytelling opportunity presented, and then they just kind of blew it because people wanted to see nudity and gore. It really broke my heart watching that movie. And I don't know if I'd be down for a third one. What I would be down for, though, is a true sequel, maybe that takes place 20, 30, 40, 50 years after Resurrection. Give me something new. And I know that they do need to finish the Covenant trilogy, but it's I don't know, man. I just yes, I'd probably watch it, but I feel so let down by Covenant still. My review's up on popculturecosmos.com. You can still check it out, but it still has my heart feeling sad.
Do they need to finish it? Do they?
Well, people are gonna want to finish it. Disney, if there's one thing that I can credit Disney with, is that they do good things with continuity. I mean, even their other properties. Look at Maleficent, right? They go back and really rounded out the story of Sleeping Beauty, which I still have never seen. But I mean, they do a good job of going around and rounding out their stories, giving people closure. So I don't think if they were going to put funding into another Alien film that they would let it sit without finishing Covenant. Like they would let that big gap sit there, especially if Ridley Scott had a third film already planned out.
I still think it's misguided. I still think the better opportunity is not in the Alien franchise, but it's in the Blade Runner franchise. I mean, you and I see from the fan reaction that's out there. You and I see from the emails, the comments, and there are other things which you and I are actually cannot say at this point in time, which you and I are privy to, that lead us to, I guess, lead us to the conclusion that the Blade Runner franchise could have more potential. Yes, I get the fact that Blade Runner 2049 was not a box office success, but it has grown a new life in home video. It's been one of the most popular videos that came out ever since its release, as far as that year it came out. I mean, it was on par with the Marvel movies that were out there. So it's just something I would really see him, in his final years, to gear towards that type of venture, because he is in his final years, per se, as a director. So I'd like to see him gear towards that. And I also want to give a big shout out to Jessica Boggs, who's watching us now from the TV Ratings Guide. But I also wanted to say that, I think he should focus more of his attention on that avenue than, let's say, go towards more effort into the Alien franchise, because I think it's a franchise that you're getting more diminishing returns than anywhere else.
Yeah, I know, and I know there was like talks about rebooting it, but I want to jump back to Blade Runner for a minute. Do you think you said that it is doing really well on home video, but do you think that people are, I don't want to sound rude, but do you think they're intellectual enough to appreciate a film of that depth anymore?
Well, they must, because again, you're trying to get me to out something that I can't out right now. That's a secret between you and I in regards to people's love for the Blade Runners franchise. And all I can tell you is the feedback that we're getting, if you were to look at it from the people that follow Pop Culture Cosmos, they seem to like a lot of the things we like when it comes to Mass Effect, Uncharted, that we talk about a lot. But there's a lot, we also talk quite a bit about the Blade Runner franchise, and that seems to be very popular among a lot of people that follow the show. So, if we're going by what this show dictates, I'd say, if Ridley Scott were here right now, I would say to him, maybe you would want to lean towards that direction because of the, like I said again, the diminishing returns. Now, going into what he was almost talking about, like a prequel, because pretty much the Covenant Prometheus deal is a prequel, and he wants to go ahead and bridge that gap to the original original Alien movie by going into more depth on the xenomorph eggs. But really, man, can I ask you something? Would you find a bridging of the gap between Prometheus and the original Alien movie based off the xenomorph eggs? Do you really find that exciting? I mean, if you're really basing that as the foundation of a new movie?
No, I don't. With this prequel trilogy, they set up these big questions, and they were supposed to center around the engineers, and then people complained that Prometheus was too, smart for them, and they wanted more xenomorphs, and they wanted more nudity and sex scenes and stuff like that, and that's what they got with Covenant. And now I don't care what happens, and I feel like I can't be the only one though. What do you? I'm sure that you've seen Covenant. What are your thoughts on it? Am I alone on this island?
Well, Covenant, like you, Covenant was a disappointment. But then again, Prometheus for me, I did not find as much entertainment value as you did. I just thought it ran too long. It was a little slow in pacing. I didn't think the movie was bad. I thought the movie was very colorful, like you were talking about. The vividry, the vivid images, and the everything that was out there, and just it was a beautiful movie to watch. It just wasn't a very interesting movie for me to watch. But when it devolved even further into Prometheus, it just seemed repetitive and somewhat boring. It just wasn't bad. It just was, it was sliding for me. It was sliding. Covenant I could deal with. Prometheus, it was just not that, just not really that good.
Wait, did you get that backwards? Prometheus you could deal with, but Covenant wasn't that good?
With the first one, Prometheus. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first,
Yeah. Okay, I just
Prometheus,
wanted-
Prometheus, the first one. Covenant was the one that was the one with the diminishing returns. So,
Because it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I mean, the critics hated Prometheus, but they loved Covenant, and the people that like the true like fans of the franchise liked
Opposite.
Prometheus, but didn't like Covenant. So naturally, Ridley Scott wanted to go with what the critics wanted, but that just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you make a film for them?
Again, it's just, is there enough legs in this Aliens franchise? That's what I want to know. That's the thing. You are a huge fan of the series, and when it comes to Prometheus and the Covenant and that whole deal, is there enough legs to continue that part of it? Because whatever that third movie is has to finally attach itself to what we see in the original Alien movie. I mean, do you really think there's enough interest in that, or can it go somewhere else? Can it go beyond? Can it go to like after the completion of all the Alien movies and go into a different I want to say atmosphere, but different perspective, a different point in time in the Aliens timeline?
You know what would be interesting? You know how with Covenant they had those like two shorts that they put up on YouTube that featured James Franco.
Yeah.
You know, the times when they're floating in the ship. It'd be interesting to have like the beginning of the film be that bridge between Covenant and Alien, and then have it jump to like 100 years later or something, and then we're still with David. You know, and he's realizing that that obsession that he has with like Ozymandias, right? Like he realizes that he is not God, and he does fall like Ozymandias. All the statue, that all that's left is a heel. Like he does fall in that manner. Like it would be cool to see that happen. But I mean, I don't know. It feels like if they finished that and tied it to Alien, it would be like Revenge of the Sith. You know what's going to happen, and there's going to be memes made about it for years to come.
Well, like I said, for me, Prometheus of the two, and that's like, now that I got it straight, and was the better of the films for me. It was the more colorful, was the more interesting because it was a return to the Alien franchise. Covenant was just repetitive, and again, both had pacing issues. And I'll tell you what, for me, it was just something that I was done with. I never had a great interest to begin with after the Aliens that you and I both are very fond of. In fact, it's one of your favorites. In fact, we talked about it on our previous episode in the seven, as far as in the top 100 films of all time for Pop Culture Cosmos. Yeah, it's in our list. But after that, for me, the series as a whole has gone. But Prometheus for me was like, okay, I could deal with it, but it just wasn't very. It didn't bring me in enough. Let's put it this way. And then when a Covenant came around, it was just fell down even further from there. My lack of interest in the whole series, and that's the problem. I think, is there enough people for Disney to go ahead and say, yeah, we'll go ahead and give you 150 million, Ridley, to go ahead and look at that to as far as extending that franchise. Would it be better as a series for Hulu? That's some of the things that you got to start looking at. Is if it's something that can still go on the big screen? Is it something that maybe you want to go ahead and venture into as far as in the streaming format? Because that seems to be where all these fading franchises seem to go.
Yeah, I agree. But in Alien's defense, though, they have been good at each entry in the franchise. They've been good at making it appealing to moviegoers, like in theaters. Like let's look back at other big franchises, right? Friday the 13th is one that specifically comes to mind. Like after the third one, they just kept throwing garbage out there, and it was just nobody was going to see any of these movies. They were all pretty much box office flops. But Alien seems to keep having that appeal even after having so much tread on the tires, or not having as much tread on the tires these days, of people still wanting to go to the theaters to see this movie. But my big thing here is, if they're going to complete this trilogy, which I don't imagine, if Disney is interested in it, I don't think they're going to leave that gap there, because they don't do things like that. That it needs to be interesting. It needs to not just be another like nudity and gore fest. Like, it needs to have substance to it, and that's something that Covenant didn't have. And I'm sure, had Covenant picked up in in the footsteps of Prometheus, this wouldn't even be a conversation right now. They probably would have greenlit a sequel, before the Disney the Disney purchase happened.
Well, that's one thing I want to ask again. We'll just close it out with this. Is there enough mileage, as Ridley Scott put it, in this Alien franchise? Is there enough mileage to have something be on the big screen once again? Is it something that maybe you should really seriously take a hard look at, either canceling the series as a whole, just leaving it to for what it is, or maybe putting it onto a digital format? Does it have that type of future? Because I think if it does have a future, I think it is on a digital format.
So here's what I'm gonna say. After having chewed this over a minute, I would say finish that third film, close that gap, and then do a reboot of sorts, but have it still take place within the timeline, but maybe do it on a streaming service. That way you're not making this like something, the Hellboy trilogy that never came to. I feel like Disney owns this property. There's a big opportunity here that can be taken if they would just, give it the TLC that it needs.
Well, we'll definitely see what happens when it comes to the Alien franchise, and whether you're into Prometheus, whether you're into Alien Covenant, whether you're still into the Aliens franchise. At some point in time, Disney is going to have to make a definitive decision on whether or not it wants to continue the franchise. Whether or not Ridley Scott is going to be a part of it, that's also up for grabs as well. What are your thoughts on the future for the Aliens franchise? Are you still interested in it? Or is it something you wish would just go ahead and just attach itself to somewhere on a spaceship far, far away? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, before we go ahead and head to the break, and Ryan John Tabasco right after that, remembering Tom Dwyer of the Big Daddy Roadshow, want to go ahead and talk to you real quick about, we talked about earlier about sci-fi and Mass Effect and things of that nature, and how much we have a great affinity for it. But there are games out there that are trying somewhat, they're trying hard to replace that Mass Effect experience, which Andromeda didn't give to us, which we're still hoping even to this day that Mass Effect will suddenly come back into our lives with a new Mass Effect game, or even a Mass Effect rebooted, redeveloped trilogy. I want to hear your thoughts, man, on Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen. And the reason why I ask that is Elite Dangerous, they're coming out with some DLC that's called Odyssey, which is going to take this starship-based game and put it onto different planets, and also give you the atmosphere and the aspect of a first-person ratio. So you'll be able to go ahead now and land on planets and go ahead into an adventure-type scenario. Star Citizen is a game we've talked about before on this show, that has been in alpha stage since 2012, has gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars backed by backed on Kickstarter, and backed by people donating funds and things of that nature for it. I mean, they've gotten hundreds of millions of support, and they've gotten big name actors to go ahead and be part of this franchise, but yet we've seen very little in returns. It all seemed to be in development stage, depending on how much you put in. Are you playing it? What part are you playing it? That game is supposed to have a huge segment for a campaign-like mission, They're coming out with in the not too distant future a 40 game multiplayer thing DLC called Theater of War. Then they have their own other set of missions that's separate with Squadron 42. They've got this whole experience mapped out, but the problem is it's not been out, and it's not been out for in full. We don't know when it's going to come out. That's the problem, because the fact it is 200 since 2012 in an alpha stage. It seems to be perpetually in development, where more and more people are putting more and more money in. But with either of these games, they're not going into a broader audience, which is, I think, is the problem in and of itself. So I want to hear your thoughts on either of these games, and can either of these games fill for the general audience out there, for you and I that are console gamers, that are not PC based, that are just basically looking for that next fix in a sci-fi drama Mass Effect style universe. Can it get that fix? Can it give us that fix to go ahead and fill that hole in our Mass Effect size hearts?
Okay, I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't think so.
Well, you're not disappointing me.
Well, I know you're a fan. I just don't want to let you down. Here's
I'm
my
a fan
thing.
of Mass Effect, but I'm not
Yeah,
a
well,
fan of these games.
yeah, same. And I do eventually want to go back and play Andromeda as with everything fixed, as the experience that it was meant, quote unquote, meant to be, more or less. So one day I'll do that, but probably not anytime soon. As for Elite Dangerous, let's talk about that one for a minute. I absolutely love the idea. I am 100% on board to try that game, but because it was not designed to be to have that first person narrative. It's a flight simulator. Because it was not designed to have a first person narrative, I don't think that it's going to be that great. Like, it'll probably be fun for a couple hours in the same way that like Simpsons Hit and Run was fun, when you're playing around with your buddies. But or even what was it, Command and Conquer, right, where you're going around and your buddies set up their bases and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it'll be that kind of fun. It'll kill some time. You'll have a good time with it for a few hours. But I don't think, just because it wasn't built from the ground up as a single player narrative game, I don't think that it's going to do much in terms of filling that hole left by Mass Effect. On the subject of Mass Effect is it's it's a weird game, because it's not driven by a forced narrative. We're going on to Star Citizen here, right? And Star Citizen is a big game. It's a bulky game, it looks like, and it's got all this star power on it. Everyone's got their lines. It's essentially, you're going to be playing a movie. And this is my
Well,
complaint.
one part of it is. One part of it is. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't.
one part.
There's these huge sections of this entire game experience, and that's it just right now is just all there. But the problem is it's just all there, and it's not complete. It's always an alpha stage, and after so many years in development, people just might not have any interest when it finally comes out. And we don't even know if it's really
Right.
going to come out on consoles too, which is a big key as well.
Right. Well, I mean, look at what was Remedy? Is Remedy still Remedy, or are they 505 games now? Is it? I don't
I'm not
I don't remember.
100% sure. I think maybe it's 505, but I'd have to look into it.
Okay, so they had what was that game, Quantum Shift? Do you remember that? It was a game that tied all these different forms of media together. And I want to play it eventually, because I from what I understand, Control is what links like Max Payne and Alan Wake and Quantum Shift all together. Like, they have their own world, which sounds kind of cool. So now I want to go back and play them. But the thing about that game, it was very ambitious. People were very excited about it because it tied in like real life, real time, real life action with video game stuff, with other forms of medium. They had tie-ins to Alan Wake and some of their other games, and people were really stoked about it. But then coming out of the gate, and people actually have the time to play it, it didn't do bad, but it got mediocre scores. It was not what they wanted or what they thought it would be. So something like Star Citizen, I don't feel like it's, even with all those pieces, I don't feel like it's going to be what people are hoping for. We still haven't seen what the actual gameplay in this game looks like. It could just be a big, these could all just be cinematics for all we know, and the actual game is not really anything fun. And it's with Mass Effect, they don't it's not a linear narrative. They don't make you go this way or that way. You make your own decisions, you build your own character, you shape your own story. And with Star Citizen, it sounds like they already have a pretty big story scripted out. So I don't know how similar to Mass Effect that will be. But what is it? What's appealing to you about Mass Effect? Let me ask you this question first.
I know that's something in our many conversations that we've talked about Mass Effect. You've never asked me that. I feel hurt, man.
I know. I'm making up for years of ignorance.
No worries, man. It's the sci-fi drama. It's the fact that you can go ahead and help create and craft your own narrative. Yeah, I understand. This is a game that was based in 2007, so the decisions that you make, for the most part, it all tied very close together. Whether you wanted to be on the really good side or the really dark side, eventually it would lead to almost the same point in time with almost the same decisions either which way. And I understand that it was supposed to lead to a culmination of Mass Effect 3, your decisions that you made through the entire trilogy just culminating in something that was really going to be rewarding, and it didn't quite work out that way. Their ambitions were very high, and ultimately, whether you say that it's because EA stepped in or what have you, and it just didn't work out fully 100% in Mass Effect 3. But for the instance in Mass Effect, it has its issues gameplay wise. It has its issues as far as loading and things of that nature that people always draw at. It may not be the greatest and most fluid RPG in the world, but my gosh, man, when you create a narrative and you go deep into it and you look at it as far as from a perspective of, I could go ahead and save the galaxy by the end of this game and actually feel like I saved the galaxy, that to me is just what's the best part about it. And the fact that I not only did it once in Mass Effect, but twice in Mass Effect 2, and then again to a certain extent in Mass Effect 3, which up until a point of the ending was a really, really, really good game. People forget that part. People forget about the 90% that was really, really good. They just don't like the 10% about the fact that all their decisions weren't really factored in. That point in time on those Mass Effect games was really compelling to me, and that's what I love about it the most, was the fact that I could design my own sci-fi drama that truly made me feel like I was part of something really special.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in that, that idea of escape, not you fleeing from something, but something inviting you into this into its world and making you feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's something that it can only be done in, a game that lets you, if a trilogy of games that lets you take your choices from each game and rewards you for them and lets you see them play to fruition in the following games. Like that is I've never experienced a franchise that immersive before. Granted, like I love me some Halo and Elder Scrolls, but like their interconnectivity is not really connected. They're all kind of separate stories on themselves, whereas Mass Effect really does feed into each game. Because I mean, even the moment you get control of your character in Mass Effect 2, right? Like your decisions from the last game are having an effect on you, and that's something that it is really cool. It is, and I don't think it's something that is going to be able to be successfully repeated in other games.
Well, it can. It just has to be connected together very well. It has to be thought out. It can. In fact, I'm hoping, you and I are both hoping, that Mass Effect 5, whatever it ends up being, if it ends up being, which I think it will end up being because EA is EA, and they're all about the Dollarino. And eventually they're going to go back to it. I think that the rumors that are getting louder and louder and louder of a Mass Effect trilogy remake eventually is going to come to fruition because it's something that they may have been standoffish about, but I think it's just going to come to fruition because those rumors are getting louder and louder about that happening. And if that's the case and that's popular, I think a Mass Effect 5 getting into another new trilogy that escapes the bad taste of Andromeda, will be not far behind. Not too far behind.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the right time to do it. With the new consoles on the horizon, plus this is the year where everybody played video games. 2020 has been an absolute wreck, but once the dust settles and this new, these gamers who have these or people who have become gamers over the course of all of this chaos, this gaming culture has grown. Whether you want to admit it or not, gaming culture has grown over this past year, and this would be the time to introduce something like that into the wild, or get people excited about it, because you're not going to find a market as open as it is right now.
Well, let's hope that we can go ahead and have a return to the Mass Effect, because our conversations veer towards Mass Effect, and that shows you the type of interest we have right now in Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous. And both those groups are trying really hard to create that immersive space experience. Is it something that it is going to be that for you? I mean, we want to hear your thoughts on it with the Odyssey DLC that's coming up for Elite Dangerous, or what's coming up for Star Citizen on either Squadron 42, Theater of War, or whatever it is they're adding on to the Star Citizen experience. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Can this fill, or is this filling your Mass Effect hole in your heart? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. It isn't for us, but it might for you, and we want to know why. So please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, coming up right after the break, it is Ryan John Tabasco, who is going to be, along with me, remembering Tom Dwyer from the Big Daddy Roadshow. We'll share some memories and thoughts on him, because he did pass away last week, and we're truly sorry and want to go ahead and send along our condolences to his family. But we're going to be talking to Ryan John Tabasco after the break about Tom Dwyer and why he made the Big Daddy Roadshow so endearing to so many listeners out there. This is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is PCC Multiverse. Want to thank so much Ryan John Tabasco for stopping by to talk about Tom Dwyer, the late Tom Dwyer of the Big Daddy Roadshow, and his memories. Cannot thank him enough for spending some time with us. But before we head on out, my friend, I love the fact that retro is now in vogue. I love the fact that all these gaming systems from the past are now being brought back into our memory. I mean, we've seen what the mini Atari, mini Nintendo stuff, mini Sega stuff has been introduced in the past. Like the
Television is actually working on something right now.
And Television, ColecoVision, Commodore 64, all this retro stuff is great, man. But Sega is just about ready to go ahead and launch later this year. They just announced it this week. The Game Gear Micro. I knew you were waiting for it, man. I knew you were just with bated breath that you were just waiting for this to happen. But the Game Gear Micro is coming out later this year to Japan and the US. Going to be, I think, around $50 for each unit. Little mini handheld, which was already a mini handheld, but it's going to even be a smaller handheld. And it's going to come in 4 different colors, each with 4 games each. Obviously, Sonic is going to be part of one, and some other games are going to be a part of the other, like Shining Force Gaiden, Outrun, Puyo Puyo 2. There's going to be some great games that are going to be a part of each of these. Again, it's 4 games, 4 Game Gear Micros each. They're going to be available. So I'm asking, my friend, I'm not excited about this at all. I wasn't excited about the Game Gear in the first place. So I want to ask you, my friend, this love for nostalgia, this love for retro gaming, I am truly embracing as much as I can. But for me, it stops with the Game Gear Micro.
Okay, so what's funny is the fact that every time Sega or the news or the media reports that Sega is about to make a big announcement, everyone's like, yes, it's gonna be a new console. And what happens? We get like these micro consoles, we get these recreations that don't even play your old Sega games. We get stuff we don't.
Refreshes of a Yakuza.
Yeah, we get things that we don't want. Like why can't Sega just read the signs and make another console? They don't have to make games. They can have all those other, second and third party developers take care of that stuff. Just make another console. Give people what they want, and it's really that. I mean, I don't know what the logistics of that is, but stop like doing all these false flags, just give give people something they actually want. But on the topic of Game Gear, I will give credit where credit's due. Game Gear was not better than Game Boy, but they did some things better than Game Boy. The whole idea of being able to like play on a screen that completely lit up and you didn't have to worry about getting one of those little like flashlights with the bendy straws and shining it over your screen. They did a great job with that. You could play the games in the dark. Awesome. Awesome. But the thing was a brick. It was an absolute brick. Like you could probably use it if you had a home invader, you could pick it up and smack them in the head with it and they would fall asleep for a week. It's just that's how much of a nuisance that thing was to carry around.
But it's going to be a lot smaller now. And the only thing, it only comes with 4 games each. And for $50, for most of these games that are probably, you and I could walk into a retro game store, like Retro City Games, shout out to them, and get those for $10 maybe?
Well, here's a bigger question for you. So why am I going to pay for this when I could just go to like Target or any gaming store really, or just go on Amazon and I could probably find, you know, 9 or 10 little knockoff consoles that have the same things but probably have more games I can play in them. They might not be good quality, but for $8 and I can get 30 games on a little tiny piece of plastic. What's to stop me from getting that instead of this?
Really, not much to stop you, but that's the thing. How much does our love for retro, where is the limit? Where do we draw the line as consumers? And obviously, they did well enough with the mini Sega Genesis that they felt this was necessary. But the thing is, I think we are going to draw the line with this. I think it might have some interest in Japan, and certain versions of this might have some interest in the US. But to sell 4 different ones with only 4 games each, that's a stretch, man. That's a real stretch.
It is. And here's a big thing too. Like if they were to make like a Sega Saturn mini or like a reproduction of the Sega Saturn that has games built into it, or even a some kind of like thing you can plug into your Sega Genesis Mini that plays Sega Saturn games, I would be on board for that. Or even if they wanted to make like a Sega Saturn 2, I would be stoked about that. But I'm not excited about this.
Well, before we go ahead and poop on it anymore, we're going to go ahead and let you know that, again, it's coming out later this year, right around the holiday period, October in Japan, and I'm assuming wintertime in the US just before holidays. It could be that great Christmas gift you've always wanted. No. But anyways, I want to go ahead and tell you the black Game Gear, the original color Game Gear, that's going to come with Sonic the Hedgehog, Puyo Puyo 2, Outrun, and Royal Stone. The blue color is going to come with Sonic Chaos, Gunstar Heroes, Sylvan Tale, and Baku Baku Animal. The yellow one is going to come with Shining Force Gaiden, Ensai, Jashin Nukino Hi, Shining Force Asura Haija, and Shining Force Gaiden Final Conflict. And Nazupayu Aruro Noru. Saying that 10 times fast. And finally, the red version, the red version is going to come with Revelations: The Demon Slayer, Megami Tensei Gaiden, Last Bible, and the GG Shinobi. So that to me is not a winning lineup right there for you, man. I don't see any of the famous Sega games outside of Sonic that I'm really interested in. Outrun maybe, but Yeah, I mean, you've got to be really into your Sega, the Japanese games. If you're into that, this could be for you. But if you're into more of the other stuff that Sega produced over in the mid to late '90s, that was for gearing towards an American audience, this may not be the thing for you.
I agree.
So, what are your thoughts out there on the Game Gear Micro? Are you excited to get it? Or are you like us and are like, this could kill the retro craze? What are your thoughts out there on it? Let us know. PopCultureCosmos at yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, before we head on out, please, if you can, just wanted to thank you so much for listening. But if you can, please, 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 please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, subscribe, like our shows wherever you can. We truly appreciate it. And please, if you got pop culture fans out there in the world that you love out there, that you appreciate, and you want to tell them about good stuff that's going on in the world of pop culture that you may have heard on this show, tell them about this show. Tell them to listen to it. Tell them, give it a try, and see if they like us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, because any help that you can give us is greatly appreciated, and we cannot thank you enough for it. But my friend, it's been great having you back on the show. On Monday's show, we are going to continue our countdown of the top 100 films for Pop Culture Cosmos. We're going to be in the 60s, just to give you a heads up. You've missed out on a little bit, but we're going to be into the 60s before we head on out. And then we're also going to report basically on what's going on in the world of pop culture, because there's always stuff going on. But my friend, as always, any last thoughts on the way out?
You know, I think I'm good right now. I might be working on something here soon, but I'll talk about it later. I think I'm good right now, man. This was good. I liked this conversation about Alien and Mass Effect. This was really appealing to my geek roots today, so thank you.
Good. That's good, my friend. Also wish everyone out there, as far as the astronauts for SpaceX, want to go ahead and wish them safety. And also to everyone out there, speaking of safety, please continue safety, continued health, and just hope everyone out there is just safe. Stay safe, stay safe, stay healthy. And we cannot thank you enough for listening. And Josh, it's just good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great